A very warm welcome. Good evening, and I want to welcome you to this edition of Behind the Headlines. My name is Charles ODONGTHO, and our guests are already here. Today is Wednesday, the 27th January 2021, and 2020 is gone, and gone with all its issues, and except the aftermath of the elections had this month, and of course COVID still with us. But let me say we are going to be looking at the topic that we are going to be looking at is the opposition and NRM performance in this election, the aftermath of the election, what should be framing the issues, what should be the agenda that should be following the elections as a nation, as a country. And to discuss all this, we have a man who is coming back here, is an OB of this place, and he is now MP-elect. He left journalism, Joel Senyonyi, and he stood on the National Unity Platform party, and he has won the election for the MPship for Nakawa West. Joel, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles. I'm very delighted to be here. Now that everyone has their mask, I can put off my thick one. I'm very delighted to be here, Charles. It's my first time to be in this particular studio. I've been to the lower one somewhere, but each time I walk through these gates, I get this exciting feeling because this is where I began to ply my trade from 2006 to 2011. So I'm glad to be here.
Good to see you, and it's good to see you in one piece because during the campaign you had got injured. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Next on his left is a man who is senior at his level, but and he needs no much introduction. But for the sake of today's program, let me introduce the Honorable Emmanuel Dombo. He is a former MP, currently Director in charge of Publicity or Communication at the NRM Secretariat. Honorable, you're most welcome back, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
And also congratulations for winning the election.
You know, when we last met here, we were discussing the opinion polls.
Yes.
And what has happened that the outcome of the elections exactly mirrored what the opinion polls were discussing here were.
You got less.
I want slightly, plus or minus, you know, those things. But it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah.
And allow me to take this opportunity to congratulate Honorable Senyonyi for being an MP-elect.
Thank you,
because you have a very serious responsibility to go and deliberate for us behind this way. And that's no mean achievement. And now that you have been to UBC before, when you get an opportunity to get to a committee, remember UBC and such institutions that you serve.
Oh, I have to.
So that they can benefit
I'm
from
an
your
OB. I have to fight for my
We should send him to the budget committee and the COSASE. He will speak for us, no doubt.
Without a doubt.
I trust him in that. We have our panelists on the show, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, or if you like, Professor Ramadan Gobi. He teaches political economy at the Makerere University Business School. Gobi, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles. I'm also delighted to have Joel, the MP-elect for my constituency
MP, right?
there. No, they took him away. You know, I'm on this side now, they cut it.
He's now in Nakawa.
There's a way they divided it themselves.
Me, they left him for me.
Yes.
For us in Tinda now, he's our MP.
But I'm so delighted for him because we've been meeting usually when he was still in this trade. He was usually in your chair, asking me tough questions. Now
he has lost that
he's
power.
going to be facing the same questions.
As well.
So congratulations to you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks, and we want to congratulate you, Joel, for that achievement. And the other day, I decided to selfishly congratulate only the journalists who have made it. So I congratulated you. I congratulated Nandutu. I congratulated Joyce Vagala. I congratulated Dan Kimosho from Kazo. And then the old ones, the Semujus, the Margaret Muhangas. And then I also congratulated Haji Bashir of Kawempe South. I think Kawempe South, one of the Kawempes. So we are glad and we feel inspired that you can also go to that revered house. Now, anyway, for me today, I'm dressed in a bow tie and in memory of an icon, a legend, Larry King, who we lost last week. And I don't remember seeing the guy in a tie like for Honorable Dombo and Ramadan Gombi. For 65 years, he did a talk show, and he was a journalist, and he wore a bow tie. The only thing that I am lacking is
suspenders.
The suspender. I failed to get one which fits me. May he rest in...
How many years?
65. He practiced journalism.
I see where he's going. He's about to justify the It's different, Honorable Dombo, but anyhow, Larry King was a great man.
What did Dombo want to say?
You know that I know that you know what you wanted to say.
These Ugandans. Anyway, let's start with... we are going to be looking at two topics largely. The opposition and NRM's performance, but largely looking at the way forward. How do we move forward? As a country, elections have to, there are times that we have to agree that the elections have passed. The issues that will come following it, yes, can be handled, but it's not election anymore. Maybe petitions are there and all these things, and maybe people conceding, they will be done. But what are the issues that are going to be focusing our agenda as a nation and all that going forward? But we are going to also, yesterday was NRM's Liberation Day, and 35 years of NRM in this town. And we are also going to be touching on that. So we will be talking about them interchangeably. But those are the issues that are going to form the basis of our discussion this evening. So let me start with perhaps Honorable Dombo. Yesterday, your party celebrated this anniversary, and it came just a few days after the election. What did it mean exactly for you in like a minute to start us off?
Thank you very much.
And is it still relevant? Some people ask, is this really celebration still relevant?
Thank you very much, Mr. ODONGTHO, and good evening, our listeners. Yesterday, we were commemorating the 35 years of the NRM administration, and specifically the date when Kampala was captured on the 26th of January. And you heard what the president said. He was looking back 35 years ago where Uganda was and how the future of the people of Uganda is being secured and what has been done over the 35 years to ensure that the future of the Ugandans gets secured. You can see the young people who were not born, perhaps they have started getting elected in parliament, and they are going to build on the foundation that the NRM has built. Even when some of them have been criticizing the constituencies who have been making. Now they have come up to be direct beneficiaries and going to use the same in order to amplify the voice for these people. 35 years ago, Uganda was almost non-existent as a state. It had collapsed totally, and those who were in Kampala and were of age knew that Kampala was totally divided and the country was divided, shared amongst the various fighting factions that were present at that time. When you look at the international image, the civil service, the public service and health, education, we only had only one university in the whole of Uganda. You know how we used to brag with the single university, and you know how many children Could we miss going to the university just because we only had a single university in Uganda? The economy had collapsed. The revenue collection wasn't of any meaning. And Uganda could hardly finance its own operations. But over the years, the government has been reconstructed. The economy was reconstructed and rebuilt. Revenue generation increased. Investors came in Uganda and they have been taxed. They have created employment. They have also made supplies, which many of us rely on. Uganda's image in the international community has been uplifted to the extent that Uganda's army can be sought to go and build peace elsewhere. And when you look at the infrastructure has been reconstructed, education and health is progressively being rebuilt. When you look at the young people, who many years ago didn't grow because of the many diseases that existed, most of them were immunized, good health, they have grown up. They are now looking for jobs, which is our next immediate challenge that we have. And finally, the focus, like the president, you heard him say, many people in Uganda are producing for consumption. And the challenge is, how do we enable them to produce for consumption, but also to earn money so that they can join the monetary economy for them to have money in their pockets. By so doing, they will be also getting into the taxable bracket, and taxable revenue would be increasing. Once electricity increases and the young people are assisted to get jobs, then NRM will be building and securing the future of the people of Uganda. So commemoration is very good. It enables people to look back and look at what used to happen, but also together we focus on the future and the challenge that comes. Okay. To us, it has come with double victory. Because as we commemorate, we're also celebrating the victory where NRM has emerged as the victorious party, with President Yoweri Museveni being elected again for another term of 5 years. So these two coincidences is something for us which came in a good time and handy enough to enable us to celebrate with the people of Uganda.
Okay, thanks. Joel, when you hear what Honorable Dombo says, remembering the accolades of the last 35 years, do you feel it? Do you join them in accepting that that's what should be celebrated?
Charles, our friends in the NRM usually make a huge mistake in my view. They tend to imagine Uganda began in 1986. That's very problematic, and you've heard Honorable Dombo say, you know, the foundation that was set in 1986. They presuppose that before 1986 there was no country. And that's certainly not true. You know, we had a country, and there's many things that existed before that, you know, have been destroyed or that have not been bettered today. I'll give you an example. Mulago Hospital. Mulago Hospital, those that were there then, I have two aunties that were nurses in Mulago Hospital, and they'll tell you when they go to Mulago Hospital today and juxtapose it against what it was back then, it's a different story. There was medicine in that hospital. There were doctors to attend to people. And I know, yes, they like to say, see, the numbers have grown. Yeah, if the numbers have grown, they have grown with the numbers of the economics and all those different things. You must be able to deal with these things. When President Obote had an assassination attempt on his life at Lugogo, he was not taken to Germany or South Africa.
1969?
He was taken to Mulago Hospital. That's where he was treated from. All the 9 known children of Idi Amin Dada, president then, the known ones, they were all born at Mulago Hospital. But in Mr. Museveni's era, his daughter is to give birth, they'll put her on a presidential jet and take her to Germany. And that's the story, you know, of many of our government officials. In 2016, 2017, according to the Auditor General report, and that's something that keeps recurring every year, 400 billion, over 400 billion shillings was spent on government officials flying abroad for treatment, to India, to the US, to South Africa, to elsewhere. And I kept thinking, wait a minute, where is the taxpayer in this whole picture? Because that's taxpayer money. if they were using their money from their businesses, or whatever the case might be, we would not have a problem. But you see, the taxpayer will go to a health center 3, deep in Bupadengo. There is no medicine, there is no doctor to attend to them. The nurse that's been there has been running a shift of 36 hours non-stop. She's about to break down. She's not gotten her pay for 3 months. It's a broken down situation. I'm thinking, how about we get that 400 billion shillings and use it to better healthcare here? Then our government officials will have no reason to fly out. They'll go to the health centers here, like Obote did, like Amin did. You know, I'm glad that during the COVID time, there were not many flights for these people to go out for treatment and all these different things. We all had to face the situation here. And so for me, when I look at the 35 years of the NRM, I'll be honest, you know, I can't sit here and say nothing has happened. Surely in 35 years, you know, something must have happened, of course, you know. I joked once, we were on a station somewhere, show, and I said, even the dead clock is correct twice a day. You know, so surely in 35 years, there's things that have been done, yeah? But there's many things that have been undone. There's many things that have been broken down. Cooperatives. I know I visited somebody who was a minister for cooperatives, Honorable Yona Kanyomuzi, and he was telling me the story of cooperatives and how they were decimated. People had economic power back then. They don't today. They are paupers. That's why they look to the politicians to give them a handout and all these different things. So there's many things that should have been done that have not been done. You see, Charles, if you set off from Kampala and you're going to, let's say, Arua, on average, you're looking at about 7 to 8 hours. On average, you have a good car, no challenges, and so on. But you see, the situation we have today is resemblant to, so yes, you have left Arua. 14 hours later, you are yet to cross Karuma. 20 hours later, you are approaching Gulu.
Where are they?
You have made progress, right? But what kind of progress are we talking about? Because you should have gotten to Arua in 7, 8 hours. But 24 hours later, you are about halfway the journey. So somebody will brag and say, but there's progress. Of course, there is progress, but what kind of progress? Are we where we should be today, 35 years later? The answer, in my view, is a resounding no. I see that when I move around. You see, campaigning, moving around campaigning, and especially the door-to-door campaigns, they opened my eyes to see things that I had not seen for a long time, things that I had taken for granted. Nakawa West is an interesting constituency. It has got areas that are slummy, that are ghetto-like, yeah? When you go to Mulimira zone, when you go to Naguru, go down. When you go to Banda, Acholi quarters, that's what it's called. It's got many Acholis and so on. They live in a very dilapidated state, in a state of despondency. You look at them, the young people, they don't have jobs. You go to health centers. I went to a health center in Mulimira. I said, this place, you get in and you come out with more sickness. You know, it's a mess. And that's the situation of the lives of our people. And so we cannot sit here and brag and say, 35 years later, we have done incredible things. Yeah. As a wrap-up, there's one of the things that Mr. Museveni and his government keep bragging about. Infrastructure, and specifically the roads. You see, we need to critically look at these roads that they brag about. Two things. One, we have built these roads that we have been able to build on loan money. So let's wait to rejoice. We have gotten these loans, our children will pay, our grandchildren, and so on. Now, is it a bad thing to get a loan? Professor here will tell you, of course not. Even for any ordinary business person, it's okay. But how have you planned for that loan and so on? The situation here, Charles, the roads in Uganda are 4 times more expensive than those of Ethiopia, the cost per kilometer of road. Now, the roads in Ethiopia, Charles, should be a lot more expensive. You know why? Because of the topography. Ethiopia is very hilly. It's not like Uganda. So, construction experts, engineers will tell you, of course, when you're trying to navigate around a hilly area, you're going to spend a lot more, as opposed to an area which is largely flat like Uganda. But our roads are 4 times more expensive. You know why? Because of the thieves that are in charge. Those are not even my words. Read the UNRWA report. It will tell you how people were absquatulating with money, and it continues to date. So for me, that does not look like securing my future. It looks like stealing from my future. You're borrowing this money, you're misusing it, you're stealing it, and then I have to pay, my children have to pay, my grandchildren have to pay. You're looking at the future. You're not securing that future. You're stealing from it.
Dombo, I want to first take that question back to you, that challenge back to you before I bring in Gobi, the professor. You hear how Joel has poured cold water on your parade, and what do you think about that? In half a minute, do you, especially where he ends with the issue of theft, and take it not very far contextually. President Museveni himself has recognized numerously, including when the memorable one was when he went to, I think, Rwanda, when there was a function, and he said that there are several thieves in this government, I don't remember what he said, how to deal with them, but of course, coming back here, there are many measures that have been put in place, institutions created, IGG, Auditor General's Office, the State House Anti-Corruption. I need to bring Lieutenant Colonel Nakalema one of these days to just tell us the anti-corruption struggles going on, all these things. But there are reports that theft is increasing. Can you celebrate that?
ODONGTHO, do you know when the 10 Commandments were made?
Oh.
It's over
when Moses came to the holy place.
When Moses came to the holy place.
He was ordered to remove his shoes.
That's when God said, "Thou shalt not steal." It was not NRM in administration, but it was at that time that God had known that in the creation of mankind, he had created him and given him so many abilities, and one of the abilities that he was capable of doing unless restrained was the ability to steal. That is why
he gave
in the 10 Commandments,
he gave the biggest of that ability to Ugandans.
He said, "Thou shalt not steal." So stealing did not begin with NRM, and stealing shall not end with NRM, because it is in the it is a creation within the mankind, but its veracity will depend on how it is fought or how it is controlled by the various regimes or government institutions that are put in place. In Uganda, there has been a lot of fight and attempt. One individual alone or one single institution may not be enough for fighting against stealing. President Museveni has acknowledged. One time he led a walk all the way from Kampala across Jinja Road to Kololo, and it was a march against corruption in this country.
Last year.
The hospitals which Honorable Senyonyi has been talking about, the drugs that should have gone to our people, the people who are stealing those people, some of them are supporters of NUP. They are not necessarily NRM supporters. But because the NRM administration were the ones who are given and swore to pretend over the matters of this country, we acknowledge and we are fighting, and it is not a fight that we're about to lose. And I want to tell you that very soon, corruption is going to be tremendously reduced to ensure that we deliver on the products. One thing I'm happy about.
I laugh because I've had that for the last 20 years.
One thing I'm happy about is that Honorable Senyonyi, one, has just graduated into the class of people who usually qualify to go outside for medical treatment as members of parliament. I congratulate him and pray that nothing happens to him that may warrant such a thing to happen in order to save his life to serve this country.
But if something happens, should be treated here.
But also that he's getting into the August House, where policies are done, where budgets are approved, and where the committees of oversight, specifically those that are presided over by the opposition, are given mandate to ensure that they follow up and they help government in the administration of its work. Okay. So I congratulate him, but the fight we're in it together, because now you have joined the government, and when you are part of government, you must fight together as part of government.
Okay, we'll come back to the nitty-gritties. Professor, you listen to these politicians speak, and you know, on a what Mizani, when you put them on a Mizani, they can really go pound to pound against each other, pros and cons, the issues. But where do we lie as a nation, and in terms of the interest that we should really be focusing on 35 years down the road? Are you convinced? You are the teacher. I would want you to give an assessment, but also give some marks for NRM at 35 years, given the issues, the main issues.
Thank you, Charles, and the honorables. You know, in political economy, they are what they call facts, and also they are what they call truth. What the honorables, both of them have said, are factual. They are facts. But you will find that in between what each is saying, there are some half-truth on each side. Uganda has a history. And the good that Honorable Senyonyi has reminded us that Uganda did not start in 1986. And actually, it's a very big mistake which sometimes the NRM makes by painting Uganda as if it started in 86. And there, they actually even lose a lot of ground to justify why or how they have made a contribution to the development of this country. Because Uganda as a nation is now about 58 years. Yeah. But also, even before it became a nation, when the 15 states met in Lancaster, and they came up with this nation called Uganda, we can trace a bit back and you see where we have come from 1900 to date. You will find that throughout those periods up to today, the curve of Uganda, the good thing is that it is on a trajectory for some of us who are looking at socio-economic and even political transformation. It is on that trajectory where it's been rising, with, of course, some periods of business cycles, as we call them, going down and keeping in the trough and then coming up. I would want to really interest every Ugandan, wherever they are, to understand that given where we've come from, with our state of the economy, state of social well-being, state of political autonomy and expression, Uganda has never been larger in terms of the economy, healthier, and also with the various opportunities for different categories of people. The many challenges notwithstanding. But also we need to remember that, and I usually, at MOOBS I teach mainly Ugandan economy. And in Ugandan economy, I trace for our young people of Uganda where Uganda has come from since pre-colonial times in terms of economic transformation, economic growth, and so on, with the facts, figures, and truth. Because, you know, in scholarship, you only give those things which have been proven beyond doubt through research that they are the truth. And I usually tell them that I don't want to delve a lot into achievements, because achievements in a society like ours, which is still constrained, they tend to derail us from looking for how do we better ourselves. So I usually look at the unfinished business, so that these younger people can go out there with this in mind, that they have to make a contribution. And to me, the main unfinished business for the NRM government NRM government has done a lot of things. I don't want to go back into them. Ugandans, you know, the good thing, many Ugandans have been around. They know where their country was. They know where it is. Perhaps what they don't know is where it is going, many of them. But on top of the things which have been done by the NRM, which it is celebrating every January of 2060, there are some unfinished business, and I would want us to put emphasis there. The first one, I would feel that Uganda and the NRM government, we still have to do one major thing: ensuring that the economy of Uganda is transformed and it works for the majority of the people of Uganda, not for the few people. What we are seeing today, the contestations we are having in this country, they are not political wars, they are not political battles. It's economic wars. It's economic battles between the haves and the have-nots. And the have-nots are outnumbering the haves by a very big percentage. And it is something which the NRM has failed to achieve, mainly because it followed a wrong economic system. The neoliberal economic system has created growth without transformation, has created economy expanding without jobs being created for especially younger people who don't own factors of production. It has created growth without distributing opportunities for especially those who do not have the opportunity either to work in the government or to have an entrepreneurial acumen and access to financing to put it in practice. So at the end of the day, we find that we have created that huge polarization. That's number one. Number two, and it is related to that, I think Uganda's also other unfinished business. We have too much market and too little government. What do we mean there? We over-liberalized this country. Liberalization is good, but liberalization, as I always tell my students, is not synonymous with deregulation. When we had that liberalize your economy, we took it literally that government had no role to play. The good thing and the good news is government of Uganda under Yoweri Museveni is now rediscovering itself.
When did they start rediscovering?
Recently, very recently, about 5 or so years now. When they said, let us restart the Uganda, which, you know, when NRM came, they had that 10-point program. I don't know how many people have read it. It's a very interesting program, because if they had implemented what they outlined there, Uganda would be at another level. But of course, when you go into the political economy of it, they tell you that we couldn't continue with this plan because we were broke, and the people with the money told us, unless you put that aside, we are not funding you. So we ended up with too much market. Here in Uganda, the market is worshipped by our neoliberal economists. They think that a parent should pay any fees asked by a school as long as that school is private. You know, we have in Uganda that a private school can ask Charles ODONGTHO to pay 2 million shillings for his 5-year-old child to attend kindergarten, to cry around the compound. Because what does a kindergarten kid do other than crying, I want mommy, 2 million per term. When you go to have a baby in a hospital, a private hospital, a cesarean, they bring a bill, 5 million shillings, because it's a private hospital. Government says, we have created for you the free hospital and Medicare, free education. If you don't want it, then you pay what the market asks. Now, this has caused a very huge challenge in Uganda. The same in housing, in everything. So we need industrial policy to come in, regulation as well. The would-be regulators were captured. You know, there is what we call regulatory capture. You find that the people who are supposed to regulate schools, they own schools. So they can't do much because they are beneficiaries. Those who are supposed to regulate banks, they are shareholders of banks. So you don't expect them to regulate banks. Those who are supposed to regulate the sellers of milk, they are the suppliers. So they can't, you know, cut their own fingers.
And those who are supposed to make the policies are the business people.
Absolutely, that's what I mean, that we have a lot of regulatory capture. You know, the president, I was a young man, and he said a word, Mulembeke. And in Kulembeka, he allowed, and actually even himself was advised that when you are appointing people to head some organizations which are going to regulate the various areas which need regulated, get the people who
know the sector,
who know those sectors, who are doing business in those sectors. So he ended up now falling in that trap of regulatory capture. And this is why you see many of these younger people who voted the Joel and others, the NUP, who were taking umbrella without looking at anything else. They were really sending the disgust which they have had over years, that you people, we have listened to you in government, you seem not to care about us. You care about just the few who are progressing with you. And therefore, let us now vote the people whom we think can really represent us. And in my view, there are others, but I would want other people to come in. But the unfinished business, this is where we need to concentrate and address these issues.
Good. I want to go back to bring back the Dombo and Joel, but there is a follow-up question I wanted to make. When you said that the folks in government who are in charge now realized about 5 years ago, which is very recent, but I wanted to go further, and you tell us or advise us whether they have done something since that recent realization, especially in bridging the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And also, as well as, because when you, and I'm going to give an example, a live example, which I have had people talk about in corridors, but not for any prejudice, not in bad interest. When you look at my friend Dr. Chrysostom, for example, in charge of education, and yet he is a big stakeholder and businessman in education sector. Do you think that his presence, for example, I'm saying that as an example, a presence of a person like that, at that level where he's supposed to take a policy decision, a regulatory decision, is it good for the future of this country, for our current position as a government, for efficiency, or is it, you know, detrimental? And what is government doing about such scenarios which are live in our faces?
Number one, without even going into mentioning names, I've told you that it's a mistake in public sector economics, and we teach it to all our students who are working in government. Never to appoint people who are trading in a sector to regulate it. It's even within, it's not economics. It's just common sense. A monkey, they say,
cannot determine the fate
of
the forest.
Number two, you're asking on the realization of the government that they were overdoing, they were becoming more Catholic than the Pope. in the areas of liberalization and deregulation, to the extent that when we were asked to open up our economy, for us we had pluck out the door and throw it away. And also we stopped regulating the players, the economic agents. I would want to say that we have realized this, the way I see government moving now. When you look at the development planning, which has come back in Uganda, it started about 10 years ago. The man who died recently, my good friend, Dr. Tsamba Mugerwa, told me the wars, the battles he has fought with those in charge of the economy, to realize, and even some politicians, to realize that you can't transform a country by just relying on market forces of demand and supply. Those winds, wherever they blow you, you go. You need a plan and implement it. Then you bring in also the aspect of the rebuilding and relaunching of Uganda Development Corporation. That investment arm of government, in a few years it has been around, it has shown that certain things, if they were done 20 years ago, would be very far. Okay. You can see a number of now factories in different parts of the country where private sector had implicitly implied that you can't do business there. The factories now are flourishing. There's a factory of sugar where there were battlegrounds in Acholi. In Atiak. There is a factory of oranges, orange juice and mango. It's now in every supermarket here. The Teju juice, it is in Soroti. There are factories being built. There is a cement factory being built in Moroto. Someone thought that Karamoja is for the Karamajongs. Nothing can be done there. Okay. There's a factory, tea factories and so on. So when you see those things happening now, that government has realized that these things can be done, and we de-risk business, allow private sector to come in and create more productive jobs for younger people, those are the good news I'm saying on the realization.
Joel, you, by all means, you are one of those within the 35 plus or minus beneficiaries. Me, I'm like plus 10, which is not so much, you know, which is a little further. You are closer to the years. And you have been pleasantly a beneficiary of this demographic called the young people, who have come up and they're saying, no, we are not convinced that you have done enough. We want more. Now that you are in a position of a national leader as an MP, and you are going to be tasked to plan for these young people, I know that you are not convinced that the NRM has done enough. What do you think should be now the focus going forward, from your own perspective, but also looking at NRM still here for another 5 years? What must they do right, following from what the professor says, what has not been done?
Charles, interestingly, well, some people know, some might not, I was actually named after Museveni.
Ah, yes, you're Joel, actually.
He came into power in January, I was born in December. And my parents were very excited.
So you are really a beneficiary of...
But a big-time sufferer. The benefits are far little compared to the suffering.
These are NRM children.
When I was born in December, my parents were very excited. They said, no, we must name our child after this hero. You know, to them at the time, he was a hero. And to many Ugandans, really. So they wanted to name me Yoweri. But my mother, who is very forward-looking, said, but now you see, this Yoweri name might give our child problems in future. Let's give him the English version, Joel. And I grew up thinking, this man, he's really my hero. Only to grow up and realize, surely, my hero became a shadow of his former past. because he, as somebody wrote a book, left the correct line. I read that little book, the 10-point program. It's a very little book. It's no longer in supply, by the way, deliberately. I think these people bought everything that was out there because it was exposing them. When you read that
it was expanded and went beyond the...
Not information.
Are you kidding me?
Joel, sorry to interrupt you. Actually, the 10 points program was edited and 5 more were added. Yeah, 5 more were added to it. I can remember the 10, but I don't remember the other 5.
These people are masters at editing and amending things and the Constitution, so not surprising. You remember sowing the mustard seed? When you juxtapose the old version to the new one, clearly they realize, no, in the old version, this thing here exposes that. So let's change this, let's edit, you know, not very surprising. But you see, when you read the 10-point program, oh my goodness, you would think this is a group of young fellows that are on a mission, an incredible, incredible mission. But it turned out, like many who eventually left, they said, no, this is not what we fought for. Clearly, you were chasing after your own end. I'll tell you some of the things that can and should be done soon enough. So Professor was saying that he is happy about the tone that is changing, government saying we must begin to do this and so on. I'll tell you, there's a lot of talk, too much talk, there's little action being taken. Take a look at corruption as an example. Almost every year, I was in the media for 14 years, and I would know for a fact that each time the president came for a State of the Nation address, budget speech, he would speak very tough about corruption. I am going to hang these ones. I'll put them on firing squad. Corrupt people, you're finished this time round. Chisanja hakuna mchezo and all these, you know, legal, I mean, this is just craft up words and sloganeering. Too much talk, very little action. Honorable Dombo was talking about the walk. Honorable Dombo, you don't fight corruption by just walking. The most you benefit from walking is exercise. Good for... I saw many of the people who are walking and I was like, these ones really need exercise. Physical exercise, really, you know. They looked like they they have been away from the gym for a long time. I think that's the biggest benefit some got from it. You don't fight corruption. You fight corruption by being deliberate. I'll tell you, Charles, countries that have very limited levels of corruption, it's not because those people are very holy or whatever the case might be. No, everybody has got potential to steal, like you were saying. From back in the day, 10 commandments, stealing has always been around. Oh yes, sure. That's why the commandments are in place. That's why they've got to be enforced. You know, that's why the law is in place. Act on it. So I'm saying countries where there's limited levels of corruption, it's because they have made it very risky to steal. It's not because people don't have the urge to steal. Oh yes, they do. All right. And Uganda, by the way, is a very religious country, as the statistics show you. Highly religious, Christians, Muslims, and so on. About what? 90% of us are religious people.
95.
We are almost 94, 95.
Oh my goodness, we are such thugs. So you fight it deliberately. You don't just talk about it. You must have the willingness to do so. Okay, people will always have the urge to steal, Honorable Dombo. How do you curtail that? Not by just preaching, please stop stealing and so on. You take action. You make it risky for people to steal. You make the system watertight. Our systems are not watertight. When you look at the structure of government, there's just too many leakages. Even those that might not have the urge to steal, they realize, but here there's a loophole, there's a lacuna here, let me take advantage of it. And they take advantage of it. Many times you find out years later, if at all you ever do. Charles, I imagine you read the Auditor General's report that is annual.
True.
Oh my goodness. When you read that report, and that's a government report, you will see how much of thieves we have with titles honorable, whether it is ministers, whatever the case might be, people in government, people are there stealing. And that's the Auditor General's report. That's a government report. If it was a report done by civil society, the Dombos would be on TV saying, no, civil society, those are funded by America, they have a Western agenda, they don't like us. The Auditor General is appointed by the sitting government.
Yeah.
And he produces a report annually. When you read that report, it's very disturbing. So we must be able to fight corruption. There's no two ways about it. We have so much money in this country, Charles, but it just grows wings and flies away. And it is okay, it's business as usual. Honorable Dombo was saying that, yes, now I'm going to Parliament, the oversight committees, PAC, and so on, they're led by the opposition. There's so many reports done by PAC and all these other corruption-fighting government entities, including Auditor General's reports, but they just keep heaping dust they're not acted upon. We must be serious about this. The other issue, Charles, is we must downsize government. Professor, that's one of the other things that are exciting to hear government say. About 3 years ago, they talked about that. Was it 3 or 4? Thereabout.
It is in the manifesto now.
And everybody was excited that finally, because you see there is a government, this department, this one doing the same thing. So we have the Land Commission, there's a State House Department for Land, there's this, you know, all of them are supposed to be doing the same thing. And you're thinking, but why? When the president, it was I think 2 years ago, in his State of the Nation address, he said, now I'm going to introduce the State House Anti-Corruption Unit because the IGG has let us down. And I said, no, President, I think here you're being, either you're just being a liar or you're being hypocritical. And here's why I'm saying that. The IGG, about a year before that, we did an interview with her, you know, where I was in the media. And we asked her, Madam, so what happens along the way? We see you're catching very many small fish. Where are the big fish? Where are they lurking around? And the IGG, Justice Mulyagonja, said, you see, whenever I go after the big fish, I find them hiding behind the president. Those are the exact words she used. And so we grilled further. We said, so what do you mean? She says, look, some of these people are untouchable. So by hiding behind the president, it's the president you meet, and you know you can't go further. So the president protects the corrupt people. And so as opposed to saying, let's create a State House Anti-Corruption Unit, empower the other one. If you think that the IGG is not playing her role, well, all right, sack her then, put in place somebody that you think can deliver, hold them accountable, let them deliver. The IGG has also said, look, we don't have enough funding, we don't have enough staff to run after these people. Empower that office. You don't create another one, an alternative one. And that's one of the other challenges. There's just too many districts that are coming up. And this is not popular, you know. Even for a politician like me, I shouldn't be saying this, but we must begin to speak the truth. Every village cannot become a district for heaven's sake, just because the voters want. We mislead the voters by telling them, you see, this district is too big. Let's imagine this table here is a district. And they say it is too big, there's a hospital here, there's a school here, there's none this side. And then the politicians, they deceive the voters and say, you know what, for there to be a school and a hospital here, we must split this into a district. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, let's apply common sense. If the issue is a hospital, a school, build it already. Why are you creating another district and then shoot the cost of public expenditure high? These are unpopular coming from a politician, but we must begin to talk about it. We must downsize government. Parliament, which I'm going to, we are going to have about what, 523 people?
About 527, 29.
And the number keeps growing. Why, for heaven's sake, for a population that is 45 million or thereabout? Why? Because you see, there's no research that shows that there's a direct correlation between the higher number of MPs, higher number of ministers, higher number of RDCs and all these different things with the betterment of people's lives. If there was, then let's have 1,000,001 MPs, if that results into the lives of people getting better. But that's not the case. We must put a stop to some of these things. So when I was running for Nakawa, that time they hadn't split it yet, and I was going full throttle. And so people told me, we're going to split these things and so on. I was actually one of those who was opposed. One, because I had hope I was going to win.
You wanted a big territory.
But even if I wasn't to win, the principle, the value therein is that we can't keep creating these small administrative units. They are a huge load on the taxpayer, and yet the taxpayer doesn't get value out of that. Let me talk a bit about the economy, Charles. There's things that, you see, the economy, and I've heard the professor say this a number of times, the economy is not as complicated as we sometimes make it seem, especially to the ordinary person, yeah? Because what's the economy to them? It is that I go to hospital, I find drugs there. I find a nurse to attend to me. You know, it is that I have some money in my pocket. That when I have goods, I have people to buy them, I'm able to break even. You know, that I'm a young person, I finished school, I have a job, I'm able to pay bills. It is simple. The economy is in vernacular. But we tend to complicate it, GDP per capita, and so on, and all these different things, yeah, to confuse people. And we say, but you see, the curve has gone higher. But the person down there is saying, wait a minute, how has it gone higher? Taxes are through the roof, I can't pay my rent, there's no jobs, and all these different things. We have got to fix this, Charles. And one of the things that I think we need to do, I think that we need to focus quite a bit on Uganda and Ugandans for that matter. I am all for foreign investors. Let's welcome as many of them as we can. But you see, we welcome foreign investors, they come in, we give them land, we give them tax waivers, and of late we have begun to guarantee them money. You remember the Lobowa saga? I said, so now what kind of investor is this? Who you are guaranteeing money? Because the investor is supposed to come with money. Common sense. You know, like I'm saying, the economy is basic, but to complicate it. Now, yes, let's do those things, because we need foreign investors to come with the big businesses, international firms and all these different things. But can we do the same for ordinary Ugandans here, Ugandan business people? Businesses start, and over 60% of them don't live up to their first birthday. You know why? Because taxes are heavy on them. They can't break even. Somebody starts out, they have to pay this tax, the other. They are trying to get staff to do the work and so on. It just does not work. And even then, resultantly, if they are making produce, of course, the cost of that has to be a little bit higher, because there was a lot injected in producing this. And yet what we are bringing in, the imports that come in, because their governments are very smart. When you look at China, for example, they invest in their local investors. As the government invests heavily. Tax waivers and all these different things, because they can break even, they can produce and export all over the world. Can we begin to do that here? Can we focus on local investors too? You know, tax waivers should not only be for foreign investors. You can't keep feeding your neighbor's children while yours are starving. Now, is it a bad thing to feed your neighbor's children? Feed them, but you see, take care of yours first. So as we do these things for foreign investors, what are we doing for the local ones here? I was looking at the story of, just as an example, Sembule, among several others. The man cried and said, government, help me. I'm employing many Ugandans here, and so on, and government paid a deaf ear. His business crumbled. And some people in government might say, you know, why should he be very wealthy and so on? But you see, look at it from the point of perspective that this man is employing many people. He is adding value to our economy.
He's a Ugandan.
He's repatriating profits here. Many of these foreign firms, they repatriate their profits elsewhere. So economics, again, is of common sense. Can we begin to do that? Once we begin to do these things and focus on our people, things will get better.
Okay, downsizing government, a very popular proposition being made and now being pushed. Honorable Dombo, what do you know of any whispers in government, in the corridors of government, or even in your manifesto that speaks to that plan, and in a serious manner?
When you look at the structure of government,
and government includes parliament.
Absolutely,
take it at that broad level.
When you look at the structure of government, it has ministries, departments, and agencies. They are usually referred to as MDAs. And you find that there has been a lot of duplication of work. The same work that is being done by the ministries, it is also being done by departments or by authorities. At one time, before many government servants retired from the civil service, they would create authorities, they would influence the creation of authorities, so that as they retire from the civil service, they follow up the agencies, the authorities in government, so that they become executive directors and the kind. Or you would get many authorities doing the same job that would have been done by the mainstream ministries. And this has created duplication of service, waste, and at times it has created a very bigger problem where you get the IGG's office. I'll use it as an example. You have a lawyer who goes to the Attorney General's chambers. They graduated and qualified together. And another lawyer from the same university goes to the IGG's office or another authority. But just because, and all of them are working for the same government, and just because they are working in two different locations, you get one getting a salary which is 10 times more than the other, and this without any justification. So in order to remove this duplicity, cut down the costs of running government, there was a study which was done by General Salah and a team of people who made recommendations to government. And right now I know that in many ministries, their officers, when they retire, they are never replaced, as government is making evaluations on what exactly is likely to be done. So this is something that has been specifically provided for in the manifesto in order to cut down the operations of government by realigning the ministries and agencies and the work of government which is being done in order to synchronize and create efficiency in the running of government. How it is going to be done and implemented, it is only time that is going to be that's going to tell. But this is something that is specifically the president addressed. He has repeatedly mentioned it, and he has given directives of non-renewal of certain boards that have expired because of that same deliberate plan to ensure that they downsize government.
Okay, gentlemen, let's go for a break. I know that when I say gentlemen, I am embarrassed because we don't have ladies.
Oh, come on, where are the ladies here?
Honorable Margaret Muhanga, for starters, she traveled and reached late, so she couldn't join the panel here, but she's a permanent panelist on this show. And our policy is that for every show, we must ensure that we balance as much as possible. Today, I apologize on behalf of the team, but better next time. But let's go for a break right now. When we come back, I will be reading your messages as you have shared them with me, and we shall be discussing them here and looking at the 35 years of NRM, but also after the elections, what must we focus on? Let's break now.
Shopping needs, come to Capital Shoppers. We have a variety of items like foods, garments, cosmetics, and all sorts of drinks. Enjoy your shopping experience at affordable prices in our fully stocked branches in the following areas: Industrialization Road, opposite Makere Business School along Portbell Road, Duster Street opposite Nakasero Market, and Garden City on Yusuf Lule Road. To all our customers and suppliers, we thank you for your continuous support. Stay safe, wash your hands, sanitize, and wear your mask always.
A human rights defender is anyone working to promote and protect human rights in a non-violent manner. This often exposes them to risk. Are you a woman human rights defender, a journalist, legal professional, youth and/or person with a disability engaged in defending the rights of others, and your right has been violated or abused in the process, or you have encountered someone defending people's rights whose rights have been violated? Contact the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders Uganda on toll-free line 0800 100 250. Or helpline 0778 576 852.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines, this 27th day of January 2021. Some messages, questions. Let me start with the ones that, again, please, if you're sending a message, kindly share with me your name so that it's proper, we know who is asking. And if, also trust me, if you want to ask in confidence, I will do that on your behalf, but let me know. Now, so this viewer says, hey Charles, you're always strict in enforcing COVID-19 standard operating procedures. How about your guest, in this case, Honorable Dombo and Joel? Why are they defiant? They should style up. That is someone sending a message. And then William is asking, Gobi, help me. Can you compare the NUP manifesto to the NRM's 10-point program? Because the NUP guys sound like the young NRM cadres from the bush in 1986. Is Uganda's problem really simply a change of government? Then another question that is coming here for someone called Patrick is asking, could lack of regulation be the cause of high electricity tariffs in Uganda? Those are some of the questions we have now. Keep the questions coming. I will read them for the panel here that is discussing them. And we are looking at the 35 years of NRM celebration. Is there anything to celebrate? Is it still relevant to celebrate? And we are also looking at the election aftermath. What should be focused going forward after the recently held general elections? Before we went for the break, Honorable Dombo was responding on the proposition of downsizing of government. Government includes parliament, of course, but we are looking at all those issues. Professor Gobi, you wanted to make a comment on the issue of corruption, the runaway corruption. Do you think that the corruption war is one that we are defeated on?
Yes, thank you, Charles. The issue of corruption is a very fat debate in Uganda, but we need to understand that the corruption we have in this country is of two categories. There is corruption of greed, and it is rampant. But also there is corruption of need, and that one has reached a systemic level. Now, the corruption of greed is the one which we are mainly interested in because it makes a lot of news and sound bites. People stealing billions and trillions of shillings. As the Honorable Senyonyi said, the Auditor General of Government has every year issued statements and reports indicating the level of corruption and how it has been growing. But as well, we need to recognize that there are a number of successful prosecutions which have been done, especially in recent years. When you look at from the legendary Wanovu Kazinda to those workers of public service, you remember the public service, the old man who was PS and his entire team?
Mr. Ramafa.
Those who stole bicycles. We have
the former PS of local government.
Yes. I don't remember his name very well. All those I'm mentioning in Ruzira. There is also, there are some, a duo from Minister of Finance. They are in Ruzira. Minister of Health, they are those who store medicine and were at the top level, at the ministry level. They were taken to Luzira. Jamwa and others. NSSF. So the number of successful prosecutions which have been done, all those people in Luzira serving their sentences. We have also those who have been interdicted in the office of Prime Minister, in immigration, and so on and so forth. The anti-corruption court has been quite busy in recent years. And I think on that level, there has been some progress made. Although we haven't seen what I think in Uganda big fish, they are the politicians. But you see, politicians are not accounting officers. And it becomes very difficult to succeed in prosecuting them, some of them. So these accounting officers who connive with them, they're usually the ones who get into trouble. And I would want the president, and I'm in support of Honorable Senyon, to tighten this noose further. He has achieved something in getting a number of people successfully prosecuted. We need to see more going to Luzira, as long as they have been proven beyond doubt that they have stolen money. And now there is this corruption of need. To me, it is the biggest challenge.
Isn't that the hardest to sort out?
Policemen, nurses, and all those medical workers. These are the people in different departments, small departments of government. Even the teachers, I don't know what they are stealing, I don't know. But I heard that they were also on the list, and so on. Now, why are these people stealing 20,000 shillings or soliciting bribes? Very small bribes. And this corruption, many investors have reported it. You can't do any business in Uganda without people soliciting bribes from you. The problem is in the pay to these people. Uganda, we must face this. And I'm saying this because Honorable Senyon is going to Parliament. Please utilize these 5 years to address the issue of emolument and compensation of public servants. In the manifesto of NRM, and I hope they are going to implement it, the issue of restructuring was actually part of the solution of the corruption, that government has grown so big and expensive to manage. Because right now, the government of Uganda pays a wage bill of 5.1 trillion shillings a year. 5.1 trillion every year. Wage bill plus those other things of NSSF, gratuity and so on. That's a massive amount of money.
Huge.
Huge. But when you look at the per capita take home, that's where the problem is. That policemen are paid 250, 300,000. And they are going to the same market like other people. Teachers, these nurses whom we give this medicine to treat Ugandans, and we are crying that they are stealing the medicine, they are paid peanuts. Now, what needs to be done is, first of all, to restructure. At the beginning, they were talking of rationalization of agencies. But now, in this manifesto, NRM said, no, agencies are not enough. We need to restructure the entire government. Like he has said, MDAs. Such that we reduce the size of government and then enhance pay of those who are working for government. And once you enhance pay, then tighten the noose on the corruption. You are found soliciting a bribe, you go to... But now, you know, unless we are going to turn all these buildings in Kampala into jails, when you are not paying people, like a commissioner in a ministry, do you know how much a commissioner is paid? About 800 or 1.2? You are near the answer, around there. But a commissioner is the head of department in a ministry. Is the person who's given 500 billion shillings to manage. 500 billion. But the gentleman already is receiving 1 million shillings a month of pay. How do you expect people to work in such circumstances? So we need to really take these battles seriously, and I think Parliament has a role to play in ensuring that we restructure ourselves and be able to reform our pay systems and pay people what they are supposed to get. Now, on the question of the NUP manifesto and the 10-point program, I read the NUP manifesto. It is a good summary of the NRM manifesto. Almost all of the things which NRM was, I don't know whether Honorable Joel Osenyonyi took trouble to read that book of 288 pages.
Of the NRM.
Of NRM.
That is the 280 pages.
It didn't really give a chance to other parties to even think of alternative policies, because it collected almost all the views which can be, implementable or actionable to make Uganda get to another level of economic development, as well as these other socio-economic challenges we are having. The only aspect, I think, which the NUP went into, and it is more or less to the 10-point program, is in the area of political reforms. And I think this is something you need to carry forward and address it with the NRM. How do we actualize political reforms in this country going forward? I'm not an expert of politics, but I saw it and I thought it was a very good proposal. On the issue of tariffs of electricity, it's beyond even regulation here. Uganda is the only other country in Africa. There are 2 countries in Africa, only 2, which use the full cost recovery model on electricity.
Which ones?
That every cost, Uganda and South Africa, every cost which goes into electricity, generation, transmission, distribution, they are borne by the person who's going to consume the electricity. Whether you are a private consumer at home, whether you are UBC, whether you are a factory, and so on. They just say for the large scale factories, this is the price. Because of economies of scale, you are consuming so many units, we shall make you pay at a relatively lower rate than a consumer at home. But our electricity tariff is one of the highest in the region. And why? Because of that full cost recovery model, which we must drop. And these are the things I was telling you, neoliberalism. These people managing the economy, we are devising government that don't tamper with the electricity prices. It is demand and supply. That's why today you hear that we have surplus electricity, but when about 24% are on the national grid. And we have a lot of electricity in the dams and in the lines there. In the villages of Uganda, people throw there the wire. Right now, those who are watching you, some of them on UBC, they have thrown a cable. Erigon area is the champion of doing that. UBOS found in a recent...
The Dombos.
Dombo is from Erigon area.
He's from Bukedi, but he's he's a neighbor.
Yeah, they are the champions. Kids are dying, at night. I mean, they bury them at night. Sometimes they keep them and they lie to their neighbors that there is a snake bite when it is electricity, killing them as they are trying to tap the... So we need really to work on some of these things. They are not rocket science. How do we ensure that we manage to regulate these sectors which are critical in the transformation agenda of the country, to provide these factors of production at the cheapest prices possible so that we can be competitive. The president talks about these things and they are in the manifesto. And hopefully this time they're going to be
sorry to interrupt
implemented.
You, but I'm looking at the practical reality.
Yes.
Joel talked about the cost of roads. In that talk, he referred to integrating the kickbacks. Isn't it a similar situation in this case you are referring to? That it is hard to tell the service provider that reduced to 10 from 12 when the 2 is part of the system.
There are some peculiar realities in Uganda. Number one, Uganda, among a few countries, we have land owned by the people privately. In other countries, land belongs to the government.
Belongs to the government. Like we had under.
So when we are building a road in Uganda, there is that extra cost of buying the land from the people.
Compensation.
Which goes into a road. It doesn't do that in Tanzania.
But that's the smaller part of the cost.
Yes, that, I'm beginning. That's one peculiarity. Then, because land belongs to the people, then it brings also corruption. That when those who are seated on a round table in a building like this one, taking a decision on building a road in 8 years, they have that internal information. When they learn that they are going to build Mpigi Expressway in 8 years, they can't buy that land where the road is going to pass.
Speculators.
Yes. They have the internal information. They can't buy the land, and then they sell it to government 10 times the price. When government attempts to say, no, now let us trick them. One time actually it happened. They said, let us say that we are changing the road now, from this side of the road to this side.
They got caught.
The court orders which came. And the court is full of judges who are called Lord, my Lord. But they are also part and parcel of our society. And they issue these court orders which compel government to do certain transactions the way they had set them. So we have, Charles, some realities we must deal with. Corruption of greed is going to kill this country if we do not tighten the noose further on it. There are those who have prosecuted, but we need to ensure that we stop this corruption of commissions. Like every road you see in Kampala here or in Uganda, there are some commissions. Commissioners who, people who are there to earn commissions on the roads.
Okay. Honorable Joel, someone called Mukwaya Isma from ODONGTHO says, on corruption, jailing thieves alone is not enough. Whoever is found guilty must return the money plus the jail.
Absolutely, and that's part of what I was saying to say that let's make corruption risky business.
Yeah.
So you know that you'll be locked up, you know that what you have stolen is going to be sold, and all these different things. But also make the system watertight, very watertight, such that otherwise then you're going to spend a lot more time running after the thieves, but first make it watertight. Difficult. There's too many loopholes in government, Charles.
How do you do that?
It's part of the regulation. So I was giving you the example of IGG's office. So this is the regulator that's meant to make sure, there's no lacunas and all these different things. And the IGG is saying, look, I don't have the facilities to be able to do this. And, during the break, I joked with colleagues and I said, these dombos don't want corruption to be fought because, and by the dombos, I don't mean necessarily Honorable Dombo here, but many people in government, because they benefit from it. I think that one of the biggest pillars of this government is corruption. There is a time, it's on record, Mr. Museveni said that it is okay to steal as long as you invest the money here. He said that. I said, wait a minute, is this the head of state? He's actually giving a green light to corruption, trying to justify it.
Was that the context?
Well, that's what he said. You know, so he was saying it's not a very bad thing.
Honorable Dombo is itching to respond to you.
As long as you reinvest the money here. And I thought, okay, so he's saying, no, if you steal and you go and buy a street in Switzerland and so on, that's very bad. But if you know, that's really the peak from it. But if you steal and build a factory here, it is okay. Are you serious?
Honorable Dombo, do you see the sense in which that kind of message can be misinterpreted? And if you in government make a statement like that, don't you think that you run a risk of actually you know, worsening the corruption situation?
No, they are I think, implementing the economics of Tarlock. There is an old economist. He died around 1970s, but in 1966, he wrote a treatise about what he called theft. He said the theft is a micro problem. It's not a macro problem. That a thief, when he steals from Honorable Senyonyi, it's just a transfer of resources from Senyonyi to the thief.
But you have denied Senyonyi
the macro,
good health care,
absolutely,
good education for his children by stealing from him.
He said that the only problem comes in the sense that now there will be what we call risk avoidance on the side of Senyonyi. He's going to invest in things which he shouldn't have invested in. Like in Uganda now, every car has an alarm, that thing which they fix there to make noise when a thief is trying to pick a part. Now, that has...
It is not a priority.
It has made Uganda spend a lot of money on those things. Our houses have burglar proof and the CCTV and so on. All that expenditure is what Tarlock missed in that model. But at a macro level, that is not a problem. On corruption, I would want to say corruption actually, on top of losing the money, it makes a country stunted in a way that people now start to factor in the corruption whenever they are making investment decisions. Should I invest or not?
I want to bring in Honorable Dombo, but Gobi, you can respond to this. A follow-up question here from Patrick, that electricity generation and transmission costs go up to 288 shillings only. How come that it reaches the consumer's house at 1,100? That's an additional almost 800 shillings.
That one you will call the PS of energy to come and give you the nitty-gritties. I just gave you the economics of it, but he's right. When you break it down, you find that, but the full cost is high anywhere in the world. Only that countries, what they do.
Is it true we are the second highest in the world?
Our electricity is very expensive.
It's
actually making investors.
I think after Denmark, or recently after Denmark.
One of the things that could be considered under the energy is the energy mix. Because when you look at our sources of energy, we have hydro, we also have the diesel, the one which is manufactured, which is generated from the diesels, and that one is extremely expensive. Now, when you mix the energy mix, even when hydro is supposed to be cheaper, you'll find that the average cost of production, because of the energy mix, the overall price goes high. I think progressively as generation increases, the generation capacity increases of hydro, and the thermal is going to reduce, then the use of fuels, which are expensive in the generation, or when we begin producing our own fuel, most likely that's when the cost of generation is likely to go down, and because of that, then the energy mix will create. But as long as the thermal is still high, it is likely to force the prices to go up. The other one is the source of financing, because the financing costs, depending on which bank is financing the generation and the distribution of the generation and transmission of the electricity, and the other one is the price, the markup, which markup has been accepted to be utilized, and also the energy loss, because in order to factor the price of electricity, they also factor in. Mr. Govi has just told you about the throwing of the wires. The losses. Other people don't throw wires, but they do. They still real electricity to do big manufacturing by bypassing.
But Honorable Dombo, someone is saying that the cost of the energy mix is called the bulk supply tariff, which is 288. That all generation costs and transmission costs are already included. So you are wrong. That's what the person is saying. Someone watching.
No, like Mr. Gobi has said, this is not a topic that we did research on so that we come and when we were well prepared.
Yeah.
Because I'm using my information which I used to have when I was a member of the Natural Resources Committee.
Yeah.
At that time, these are the issues that we were considering at the time when we were asking the ministry why the prices was that.
That's some good hours, I mean some good years back.
Yes, and that was also, we also had load shedding, and the energy loss was extremely high.
Okay.
And they had to give a target to the people who were hired to run the distribution of electricity.
I remember when we had a lot of, trouble with electricity.
But in one of your programs, you may need to bring here the people. We have a regulator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a regulator. We have the Minister of Energy. They could come here and feed the people of Uganda and tell them.
I will.
Why
electricity
would the cost
is
of
one of those.
This is a very interesting topic.
We plan to host them here as a critical sector one of these days.
And the dimmed power is also a very
dimmed
big
power is a big issue. Big issue. Now, but there is a lot of comments coming on corruption. I think it is a very popular topic. Someone called Dr. Baloja says, "Hello, Charles. Thank you for the moderation. Corruption, unfortunately, is entrenched in the system," and I need Dombo to respond to that. Corruption, unfortunately, is entrenched in the system simply because it lacks the political will to fight it resolutely. We only need to have a president like Magufuli. Dombo, your response to that?
We shall not have Magufuli in Uganda because the challenges and opportunities that we have gone through are different, and the historical perspective which has enabled us to come this far is different. But like Mr. Gobi has told you, when you look at the institutional setup, the institutions that fight or facilitate the fight against corruption have been set in place. The judiciary has been facilitated and remunerated. And right now, with the recent bill which was passed, enabling the judiciary to become an independent arm, was also passed in order to facilitate the process of fighting against corruption. The issue of fighting against corruption, it cannot be done by one individual. When you look at how corruption is generated, you go at the police station, and you find when somebody has committed an offense, even at the time of recording a statement, it may be the CID or the person who would be helping government fight against corruption, who would be amending or helping a suspect in the construction of the statement in order to be able to avoid the culpability of the person, even when it comes at the level of prosecution. When it comes to the judiciary, there have been judges who have been arrested or who have been interdicted because they have been themselves participating in corruption when they must be at the people at the forefront fighting against corruption. So, true, corruption is systemic, And it's not only one individual who can fight it, but government has demonstrated that corruption can be fought and has put up institutions and facilities that can enable the fight against corruption. But it depends, it takes more than two to tango. Because you are talking about corruption, who are the people who are bribing the police? Who are the people who are bribing the judges? It is the individuals whose relatives or who themselves have committed corruption and may want to avert justice. So, together we can fight against corruption, and whoever has an opportunity, whether you are in parliament as a leader of the opposition, or whether you're in parliament as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, or just a member of parliament who has been put in place, unfortunately, MP should be seen to be at the forefront of fighting against corruption. But in many times, members of parliament have been reported as people who have been cohabiting with the corrupt people or asking for bribes in order for them to pass certain things without passing the test of time.
Okay.
Or being compromised in order to pass certain reports, or to amend reports in order to get the corrupt scot-free. So it is not going to be an individual effort, but let whoever is able and is in a place that can fight corruption do it together as a community.
Okay, Honorable Senyonyi.
That sounds like abdicating responsibility. So he's saying, let whoever can in your community. Are you kidding me? People are paying taxes.
It is not. It's not.
They entrust your government with this money, and every year it is being stolen, and you're telling them, please do what you can in your community. Let's be serious. We are leaders. That's why we become leaders. We must take charge of this.
Honorable Senyonyi is just going to Parliament, and he's going to find out what I'm telling about. But there are various sources of corruption. There is a policeman who is giving somebody bail, I mean bond, on a form which says free. It is not supposed to be paid. But he's asking for an accused in order to pay for free bond. That is corruption.
Okay.
And the president is not there sitting at a police station, and it is being done by individuals, including members of the opposition, who want their people to be freed. And this has been witnessed. So
everything rises and falls on leadership. They take the cue from the top.
So whoever
and you see the same happening
has an opportunity, whether the police, if you're a policeman, or if you are the one whose person has been arrested, let us each individual play his part in the fight against corruption.
Okay. For Honorable Senyonyi, there is a person here asking, a viewer is asking, Joel has good ideas, but it appears he never got opportunity to participate in preparing the NUP 46-page manifesto. The issues that Joel Senyonyi is highlighting on air right now are not reflected in the manifesto. Why did you miss the manifesto making process?
Issues like which one? Can he be specific?
He read the NRM one.
I participated in that document, so I wish he was or she was specific to say, you have talked about this, but it's not in that manifesto. What exactly are they saying?
Okay, the person is listening.
Yeah, let them clarify.
Viewer, clarify specifically.
And by the way, so Charles, our manifesto was, you know, a smaller document because you don't need the voluminous one. NRM's had what, 280 something pages, and like I said, it's always too much talk, but they never implement these things. These people promised us an ambulance system in their 2016 manifesto. To date and tomorrow and the year after, it has not come. You know, they promised girls sanitary towels. The president went around telling young people, girls, we are going to provide sanitary towels for all of you. Up to date, we are now, you know, in another lot altogether, and none of that has happened. He promised students exercise books and mathematical sets. You see, it's one thing to lie to adults, it's another to lie to children. Eh? It's very bad. It's bad manners. Bad manners.
I want Gobi to ask you, both of you, questions. We have a culture here of the panelists asking, but you are lucky that today it is only Gobi. But Gobi, as you prepare, let me finalize with them on the questions coming for them. Honorable Dombo, my name is Kasalu from Budo. I want to say the most corrupt entity here is government. Remember, some of us had even paid OTT for a full month, and also the same with the data. But all of a sudden, they just switched us off. So who is going to compensate us for our money that we had already paid? Isn't that theft? Isn't that corruption? Honorable Dombo.
Have they switched it on?
Respond to that.
Because we don't know when, if they haven't switched on OTT yet, I mean internet yet.
So according to that person, you're still stealing.
So you need you need to find out when it has been switched on. But ordinarily, I would imagine that since we have not used, because including ourselves, because we haven't used the days which the data has been switched off, then government is most likely going to compensate. But it's not something that I know for certain. But ordinarily, that would be the right thing, and according to common sense, that should be done.
Okay. Another question, maybe this should go to all. And I think I like this. Maybe the two of you can respond to it, and then I bring on board Gobi to ask his question. There is a reason, this person is saying, there is a reason to celebrate 35 years, but only if the political question is solved. Otherwise, we may lose everything. This is someone called Chris from Tororo. The president talked about reconciliation. I think it was the representative of the Archbishop, I think Monsignor Casivante, who had talked about the need to reconcile and to talk. And then the president referred to violence. I need, in 1 minute each, I need both of you, both you commenting on that. Starting with Honorable Dombo, I think.
Which political question? People have talked about transition. Let me begin there. And as a factor, when you look at the current parliament, which has just been constituted, almost 90% of that parliament is of young people and below the age of 40. And this parliament is going to be one of the youngest parliaments in the whole of the world. So even when, for us, our democracy naturally answers that question, which keeps coming up, because we have had old people here who have lost elections. May he rest in peace. A number of people who have been in government, they lost elections. Honorable Gunda is around, is the right honorable prime minister, but he ceased being an elected member of parliament, and he's an ex-official because of his historical contribution. In his constituency, they have elected the young people who have been taking over. So when the president talks about reconciliation too, there's another political question. When you look at the composition of the current government, it is composed of people who have fought against President Museveni and whom he has attracted to come and talk with. They have discussed and agreed on a minimum agenda on what Uganda requires. So the reconciliation which that it was Monsignor, that priest was talking about. It is what the Bible talks about, what common sense should be, and it is exactly what the NRM administration has been doing on, and it is the reason why the NRM administration has been able to run government for the 35 years without interruption, because it seeks reconciliation. Like the president said yesterday, he has Ameni's relatives in government. He has Obote's relatives in government. He has people he fought with or who fought against him and shot against him. They are together in government. How about people who haven't even shot against him or even thrown a stone? They have only talked bad words against him. Why shouldn't they work and talk together? This is something that should be taken for granted, and because NRM has been doing it all along.
Okay. Honorable Joel.
Charles, this reconciliation talk makes it presuppose that there's something personal. There's nothing personal here. There's nothing personal between Kyagulanyi and Museveni. Nothing personal. It's about our country. You know, so the idea that the two should sit, meet somewhere and reconcile, Reconcile over what? This is not personal. The issues that Kyagulanyi and the rest of us are raising are matters of the country. You know, we are saying stop the brutality, stop the stealing of taxpayers' money, all right? Put medicines in hospitals, build schools such that our children stop studying under trees when it rains, there's no school. You know, work on the economy such that our young people have got jobs. These are the issues that we keep raising. So it's nothing personal between Museveni and Kyagulanyi that they can sit somewhere over a cup of tea and resolve their quote-unquote differences, you know. And yes, there's always been talk about, yes, can get together, can there be discussions and so on. We would be happy to have a discussion about our country. You see, the challenge with Mr. Museveni is the discussions that he gets to have. He calls people, now you Senyonyi come, you're making so much noise. Here is $1 billion shillings, be quiet. That's his mode of reconciliating and calming down people. Okay, you're making so much noise, let me give you a ministerial position. But does that take away the challenges there are out there? So we don't want to be boxed into a corner. So come, I throw some goodies at you and all of that. That's childish stuff. We are adults, you know, we know what we want. And this country knows what it wants. On the question of violence, Charles, you see, Mr. Museveni, and you notice I'm now addressing him directly because he's the one that keeps driving this narrative, you know, these violent young people and so on. I don't know anybody who is more violent than Mr. Museveni. He shot his way to power. He killed people to take power. He shed blood. That's violence, in my view. Innocent Ugandans died because Museveni wanted to take power. That's violence, in my view. Today, currently, he is killing young people. He's presiding over a government, over an establishment that is killing people. And then he pats them on the back. With the Arua saga, Honorable Kyagulanyi and the others were brutalized, Yasin Kama was killed, he patted the soldiers on the back. He said these young people were disturbing us and we showed them. Recently, November 18th, 19th, dozens of people were killed. And he went on TV and he said, yes, they were disturbing us and we showed them. And we shall do it again. He's a very violent man, but he likes to blackmail everybody. And he says we are violent. When has Kyagulanyi ever thrown a stone at anybody or the rest of us? When have we even ever told anybody that go and beat I don't know who? So Ugandans are not fools. They know who is violent and who is not. But of course Mr. Museveni likes to use that as blackmail to try and paint, you know, us as the bad ones and so on. But Ugandans are not as daft as he thinks they are. They know that he's extremely violent. They know that he has killed their children. We go to bury these young people and then their parents are in mourning. There's one mother who said, I've been a supporter of Mr. Museveni all this while, but he has killed my child. Now, yes, Museveni did pick a gun and shoot that particular child and so on, but he's superintending over a government that is doing these evil things. And you see, the worst therein, why people now will eventually have to point at him, he is not holding these people accountable. He's patting them on the back. So how do you explain to a mother whose child has been shot at, whose child has been run over by a police truck deliberately? How do you explain to them that you don't hold any responsibility in this, yet you'll go on TV and say these young people they are violent, that's why we're dealing with them this way? Let's get serious.
Okay, Charles.
Yes.
There's basically one addition I want to make on that one. And this is for whoever is outside there watching and may wish to take leadership or may want to take a position of responsibility. That every action, especially people who aspire to lead, be it at the village level, at constituency level, even at the state level, that they should know that the actions they do have consequences. And the words they speak have implications and they can create a problem. In the US, just after the elections, we have had people at the Capitol Hill where there shouldn't have been any murder, but because of an insightful message, because of a person who is inciting the public about elections and stolen results without evidence, he created people to get killed, including a policeman. And that's something that was almost unheard of in the United States. Even in Uganda, let us all take up our responsibility and be cautious in the things that we do to ensure that we don't excite the public, we don't incite them, and where the security organs have had excesses, I think there is room for improvement.
But you don't condemn it. The president goes on TV and he applauds them for killing innocent Ugandans. And for us, that's the biggest problem. You see, he would pretend at least, he would rather pretend and say, I'm going to take action. No, he does not. He condones it. It is okay. You heard what he spoke about Arua.
Aren't those the things that they would be meeting and discussing, even when you avoid
No, but you see, it's not personal that let them, the two sit somewhere in a room somewhere.
They shouldn't be in a room. These are things.
Issue.
Because
these
when
are
you
matters of Ugandans, Honorable Dombo.
But matters of Uganda are discussed through a discussion.
But even then, so before you talk about, let's discuss these things, can we see you take action, hold accountable those that are killing innocent Ugandans? You know, somebody is under house arrest and then you're saying, it is okay, I can talk to them. But how?
No, somebody who is under house arrest.
I mean, all the while that Honorable Chagulanyi has been under house arrest.
No, but at least because
how
of
does the prisoner talk to
because of the democracy and the rule of law, when the courts of law made a judgment and they took a decision, isn't he a free man now?
I hope he will continue to be. Let's wait and see.
So, to us, this is the rule of law that we have been supporting and want always to continue.
Rule of law, Honorable Dombo, would mean that these people who have been killed, because you see, one life is one too many. These people have been killed. I don't know who has been held accountable. Dozens of people were massacred in Kasese. Tell me who was held accountable. Elwelu has only been promoted twice for doing a noble thing according to the establishment. He was not held accountable, yet he slaughtered dozens of people. This is wrong. No, but some things need to be said of, this is wrong. Yes, you belong to the NRM, but there's no devil in saying, you know what, this is wrong, let's deal with it. It helps the country.
Haven't we been saying that?
Okay, Mr. Gobi, shoot your questions to the venerable guests that we have.
Honorable Dombo, who has been here severally, should be the first. You know, Honorable Dombo, I think it was Walter Lippmann who said, in a country where the government cannot control people by force, it better control what they think.
What they do what?
What they think.
Mm.
And you are the director now of communications in the ruling party. What do you think you've missed in having a strategy, a practical strategy of ensuring that what majority of Ugandans are being fed on and also what they think is in line with what the realities in the country are? I don't know whether that question is clear. To Honorable...
It looks sophisticated and philosophical.
Repeat it.
I'm not fond of asking very simple questions, but they are quite clear, because it is in line with what you have been, the conversation you've been having with Honorable Joel Senyonyi. I feel there could be something missing in the strategy of the ruling party, in the way you communicate what actually the party is doing and what Uganda is today vis-a-vis what it was to the younger people of Uganda. So what strategy do you think you are having in bettering that communication agenda? To Honorable Senyonyi, now that we are progressively coming out of this emotive season, going into the next 5 years of Uganda, when you are a legislator, as NUP or NUP, are you ready to have your manifesto shared with the party that won the election, so that we can have a better Uganda in the next 5 years? And if so, how are you prepared to work with the ruling government from the side, the left side where you are going to sit? In which role do you think NUP can play? Because now you had a very, very clear message, and I'm sure also you had a very clear victory, especially in this part of the country, which nobody can underestimate. How are you willing to work with the government to ensure that your ideas are implemented and Uganda is made a better place?
And maybe to Senyonyi, we can also add that the latest news is that NRM has invited a caucus, starting to plan for probably the next government, next parliament. How are you starting to prepare yourself as the official opposition, the lead opposition? Maybe you can add that. We can start from that side and then we end with Professor here. You respond to the questions that you got and then Professor will make a final way forward.
Charles, when you look at what has happened in these recent elections, you can clearly see the role of the media in determining determining the narrative and the agenda. It has been very clear. And as the education status of our country and the literacy levels continue improving and the economic status, the media is even going to become a very important role. No wonder that now many journalists are utilizing their platforms where they are in order to influence the voters, and now they are getting elected into positions of responsibility. When you look at the number of journalists who have entered this current parliament, there are really many, and so are the artists. Recently, I met somebody who was calling Honorable Kyagulanyi a novice, an unestarter, somebody who has no experience. I said, experience in what? Although I'm more senior than Kyagulanyi in politics, I'm not any senior than Kyagulanyi in mobilizing people. Because for the last so many years, Honorable Kyagulanyi has been mobilizing people, bringing them together and singing for them for money, doing concerts for them. So in mass mobilization, he is far, far above because he has been doing it more than us. The only thing the journalists, these artists have decided to do is to transform that ability into political capital, which they are now exploiting and using. So over time, there is a likelihood that people who are in the art and industry and people who are in the mass media and journalism are likely to become more in the positions of responsibility because of exploitation. Now, given that role of the media, therefore, it is important that any effective communication that is going to be done, either by government or by the church or by the cultural leaders or by any center of influence, it must strongly consider the role of the media and either do partnership with the media or influence the media on how they report, either through legislation, through training, or through partnerships that may emerge. So to us in the NRM, we're trying as much as possible to build a relationship with the media houses and the media influencers, and also having platforms through which we can be communicating the agenda of the party and also giving the public things that must be done. You may know that for us in the NRM now, the Right Honorable Secretary General, Right Honorable Kasule Lumumba, has now a Secretary General's press briefing every Sunday in order to use the media to enable the people of Uganda know and members of NRM what exactly NRM is doing as a party. This is one of the strategies that we're adopting, but we're also going to come up with other propositions in order to capture, especially the young people who are able to use social media and other forms of media that is more trending one of these days.
Thank you. Thank you. Joel?
Yeah, so Professor did ask whether we shall share our manifesto with folks in the NRM. It's a public document, and we would be happy if these things really are taken up by anybody that cares to listen, anybody in a position to act. They're basic things, you know. So yes, we had a manifesto, but it was hinging on 5 critical elements. That's why we kept, you know, raising the fist.
The fist represents?
The fist 5.
Yeah.
Critical issues, you know, around which all the other things were encapsulated. 1, equal access to healthcare and education. That's critical. That's critical. We must cease to have a country where it's only the few that can access good quality healthcare out of this country at the expense of the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is dying because, you know, they are not attended to. Education, very critical. If you want to, you know, securing the future, Honorable Dombo, has a critical component of education. In UPE, we have quantity education as opposed to quality education. Researchers have done research on these children, and they've established that pupils in P6 cannot do P1 work. That worries me, you know, so that's very important. Number 2, a people-centered government. We must have a government that in every sense works for the good of the people, that the people are the focus. You know, that's why our president needs to stop making reckless statements like, I'm not your servant, I am serving my children and my grandchildren. That's very reckless for a leader to say, extremely reckless. We must serve the people, and they must hear it, they must see it, they must feel it in our actions, in everything that we do. That it's not about us, it gets to be about the people. The 3rd component is inclusive economic development. The haves are too few and they have plenty. The have-nots are too many and many of them have nothing. That divide worries me as a leader. We must be able to fix it. You're not safe in your bungalow with your fence raised up when you're surrounding. So Naguru is one of the parishes in Nakar West. As I was campaigning, I was in one of the slummy areas of Naguru. There's a very clear divide. So there's a wall fence, a plush houses, you know. This is the ghetto, the whole of this lower area. And as I was, you know, interacting with these people, I could see one Mulodi go out on their veranda, not Mulodi, the Lord Mayor, but the palatial house owner, I imagined, you know, went on the veranda, sipping on wine, and I was looking at this sharp contrast. I said, but this fellow here imagines they are okay, but they are not safe. If these people here don't have what to eat, if they are in a state of disconsolateness, they're going to go after them. And so we must fix this. Development must be all-inclusive. It can't just be the few. Let's do everything possible to make sure everybody comes along. The 4th, land, natural resources, and environmental protection. We have slowly but surely, well, it seems to be slow. It's now at a very fast pace that we keep eating away and nibbling away at our environment. You know, swamps being taken over by powerful people in government. Forests, you know, we've had these debates again and again, back and forth. Land. People's land is being grabbed. The poor don't seem to have a right to own land. And that's a bubble that we'll explode at some point if we do nothing at all about it, you know. Natural resources. You look at Karamoja, extremely wealthy, yet extremely poor. Who is benefiting from the wealth that is underneath Karamoja? These are critical discussions that we must get to have. And then, of course, natural resources, national security and international relations as the 5th element. Because we tend to imagine that because there is no war, then we are safe, we are secure, and all is well. That's the fallacy. At another day, I will go into the details. Now the time is running out. But international relations, very, very critical for us too, as a country. I keep hearing our president say, you know, mind your business, you the West, and so on. But you see, Uganda is part of the international community, Charles. And so the international community must hold us accountable. Our government can't kill people in a manner so wanton, and it's okay. Leave us alone. Let's kill our people. After all, we are a sovereign state. Well, Uganda is in South Sudan, for example. Is in South Sudan a sovereign state? Uganda is in Central African Republic and elsewhere. Are those not sovereign states? Why are we there? We are there because what happens there concerns us too. And so it's important that all of that is very well wrapped around. So a manifesto is available. And again, like I said, these are issues of common sense. I honestly do not think that the people in power don't know the right thing to do. They just want to do it because they don't care about the people. Let's get back to caring about the people. That's important. Let's, as leaders, let's have a heart for the people. When you have a heart for the people, you'll begin to do things for the good of the people.
Okay, good. Finally, someone on Twitter called Jason Tibbs says, Charles, tell Gobi that I have an Express FC jersey for him. He may not want to come to the stadium, but he can still support his club without watching the games.
Because of the stones.
Someone has outed you. And then...
I'll be glad to receive it.
Yeah, and then someone called Mick Becker says, if the president is wishing well for the nation, he should just begin by appointing smart and sharp, brilliant young MPs like the Joels, regardless of their parties, but instead of the winner takes all model.
But they won't let it. I mean, the reason why I can't even take an appointment in this government, they won't let me do my work. You know, these ideas, they don't want to hear them.
That's so. A nice one. Gobi, make the last comment.
Charles, the reason I asked Honorable Dombo that question, you know...
But maybe, sorry, maybe this is where someone is making the point that I was even talking about. Afema Eric says, nice discussion on UBC TV with Joel Senyonyi, Charles ODONGTHO, Gobi and Dombo. I think the problems facing the common person should be the unifying factor for all parties to work together and improve the state of affairs of our country. Thanks for the program. Now you can make your comment.
Thank you. I was saying that the reason I asked Honorable Dombo that question, we know from the philosophy of democracy and all the research which has been done, that when a country gives people the right to rely on public opinion to select leaders, it's very essential that public opinion is enlightened.
Is shaped.
Is shaped. And you know, public opinion rests on the shoulders of public interest. These are some of the things we must, you know, interest ourselves in as a country if we want to progress. And I will also invite the people like Honorable Senyonyi now that is joining that specialized class of the country. You know, for us, the bewildered had left somewhere, and they go to that August house. We need really to start discussing seriously the matter of what are our people are feeding on as information regarding their country. Because this election has taught me a lesson more than any other election, that it's very important that on top of the things which we talk about, we really address the issue of public interest of Ugandans and also the public opinion, so that the two can have a point of emergence and I mean convergence. And we have a country which all of us can be proud of in the future. Our democracy, as I already said on this panel, is still very young. For us to nurture it so that it's not constipated and also creating a lot of challenges for the future. Because today, Honorable Senyonyi is talking like his hero, Joel, in 1986. I don't know how after 30 years, how we should compare notes. Hopefully we shall be alive. I would want to see that trajectory when it is forward-looking and adding a lot of value to this country, because I'm so happy that now we are having the people like Honorable Senyonyi and his team joining Parliament. Very young people, very divergent in views from those who are trying to preserve and conserve. And there is some bit of creative destruction I'm beginning to see now in our politics. And that's good for the country, but it has to be really enlightened, based on voters with enlightened kind of
Are you,
opinion.
Professor, suggesting that our voters are not enlightened?
No, no, no. What they call enlightened public opinion is where you have the interest as a country, public interest, in a way that the classes are formed, that the people who are voting Senyonyi, they are not voting him simply because he has told them, Gandhi, take an umbrella, but they are voting because they have interest to protect.
Yeah, they vote
And
the
those
umbrella
interests
because they
are-
believe the umbrella protects their interests. Otherwise, they would have voted a jerry can or I don't know what.
I don't know which type of public interest we have in Uganda. We need to, those are the conversations we need to go into.
And
Like you were describing the way you were down and looking at this other man in a building, and you know, these are some of the things we have been discussing over time in the media, where you were, and we said these things must be addressed.
Okay.
Now, those are the interests we need to go into and see how do we enlighten them.
Okay, we cannot finish. I know all of you, you know, have capacity to expose as much information as possible, and we cannot exhaust them in one sitting, but we definitely will keep talking, and so that we can, you know, reach some level of understanding of these issues, especially to educate and inform our people. For us, we shall give the platform, and this is the platform that one of them that we provide. Thank you very much, Honorable Dombo, for always finding time to be with us on this show. Thank you so much, Honorable Joel Senyonyi, for making your maiden appearance on this show. Come again, both of you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, and thank you very much. I can't thank you more, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, for many people. I met 3 people today. Today I passed by Parliament, and 3 people told me, thank for me, Gobi, because I met them at different points. So there you are being watched, and people actually watch and they give feedback. But we thank you and appreciate your time. Thanks so much to you out there, the audience, the viewer who sits in their sitting room to watch us this late. We really appreciate and cannot take it for granted. Let's keep the peace. Let's keep the harmony that we have around us, and let's ensure that we are safe. Remember that COVID is still with us. Many people are dying. If you look at the statistics out there, it's scary. It's incredible how many people can be lost just in one day in some of these countries. So the fact that there are few here, still life is being lost, don't ever take it for granted. And for me, I say, sanitize as regularly as possible, as regularly as you can. Ensure that if you have to meet, make sure it is a must if you can not avoid it. Otherwise, try to avoid gatherings, and wash your hand with soap and water. And as much as possible, ensure that you keep safe the old that are around you, the vulnerable that are around you, and let's all be alive. To the young people, we need you alive, the other side of 10 or 20 or 30 years, so that you can, you know, contribute to your country. That's the only way. People who are dead or heroes or saints cannot be relied upon to contribute anything. We need you alive.
Talk about also those who are killing them, really.
We will, you have discussed that thoroughly. You know that you are now not this side. Eh? This time is now for the moderator. You have crossed the other side. So you have lost the privilege. You have now lost the privilege and leave us.
I can throw in something, but well.
Yes, thanks to the technical team here, the producer Ivan, Kamoga, and all the rest of the team, Morris, William, Fred, and the rest of you. Thank you so much. And from the technical team, bye-bye, good night, God bless you all.